Hello and welcome to PlanYear's webinar, How AI is Revolutionizing Employee Benefits Brokerages. Before we start, we're going to run through a couple of quick housekeeping items. First off, this webinar will be recorded, so everyone who registered for the webinar is going to receive a copy of this once the recording is processed. All of the participant lines are going to be muted to maintain audio quality. And please feel free to submit questions throughout the webinar. We will save time at the end, and we're going to answer as many as time allows. But without further ado, let's talk AI. In this webinar, we'll start off with some quick introductions of the folks on the line, and then we're going to talk about what all the hype is about. Why is everyone talking about AI? We'll give you an explanation of what artificial intelligence is, and then we'll get into the meaty topic, which is what does AI mean for employee benefits brokerages? How is this going to change the industry? And then the last piece, I couldn't be more excited to show you one of PlanYear's newest products, which is focused on AI and is going to be really, really meaningful for employee benefits brokerages. So I'll do a quick introduction here before I pass things over to our CEO, Tarek. My name is Molly Presson. I'm the VP of Commercial here at PlanYear. I've been in employee benefits industry for the last 7 years, both on the brokerage side and on the provider side before joining PlanYear. Couldn't be more excited to talk AI and benefits today. And with that, I'll pass it over to Tarek to do a quick introduction.
Hi, my name is Tarek Hilali. I'm the CEO of PlanYear. My background is in brokerage and technology. Prior to PlanYear, I started a brokerage firm named Lumity and built that out. And prior to that, had worked for many years in technology. And I suppose it is the nexus of the two, knowing technology and knowing brokerage, that formed the idea behind applying new advances in technology towards PlanYear, towards the brokerage industry through PlanYear. Okay, so what is all the hype about as relates to AI? In reality, during my lifetime, there've really been two major technology inflections. The first, when I guess I was relatively young in the early 80s, which was the advent of the personal computer. Before that, accounting, for example, was done on ledgers and large booklets.
It's before my time, for sure.
Yeah, I wish it was before mine too, but sadly, I have very recollections of this. Back then, before the advent of computers, you used to actually have huge general ledgers, and you would have to calculate everything on calculators. And then all of a sudden, along came the PC, and it really changed everything. And over time, price points became lower, it became more accessible. Soon, it was in everyone's hands. And by the late 90s, the next massive technology inflection came along, which was the internet. And, where before you used to look things up in books and have to order them from libraries, now all of a sudden information was available pretty much on demand. For the benefits industry, what that meant was it was the last major technology innovation affecting benefits, where before benefit was on paper, now all of a sudden it was online on online systems. And that had a huge impact. It's really been 20-something years since the internet, came along and hit the mainstream. And there have been other things like cloud and mobile that have extended it and maybe improved it, but they haven't really been paradigm shifts in the same way. The next paradigm shift is artificial intelligence. And the reason it's such a shift is because it allows you to do an incredible and ever-growing range of things on the one hand, and it makes it drastically easier for humans to do all of these things on the other hand. And it is very rare for technology to come along and expand up that capability curve so much without becoming harder to use. But artificial intelligence does that. And it also does it in a way where it learns as it goes and it becomes capable of more and more and more and more. So I have never in my lifetime seen something that grows and advances at the pace that this does in a self-sustaining way. And that is really what all the hype is about.
Yeah, I mean, this has just been a matter of months, right? That we've been talking about this. And in that time, AI has managed to achieve this top tier performance, basically competing with the best and brightest of humankind. And this is across almost every category, right? You look at all of these standardized test scores, LSAT, SATs, GRE, GPT-4 is hovering between like the 85th and 100th percentile in all of these categories. Absolutely mind-blowing. All of a sudden, AI is the smartest person in the room, right? It's almost like you have an Ivy League MBA or JD or both as your assistant whenever you need them. This is pretty revolutionary compared to even what we were thinking 6 months ago. And I think the other shocking thing is people are really taking advantage of this at a rate that we have not seen before. I mentioned this is a matter of really kind of 2-month window before ChatGPT reached 100 million global monthly active users. Now, for even the most viral apps that we've seen historically, it has taken them months, if not years, to reach this level. Faster than Uber, it's faster than Spotify, iPhone, Instagram, even TikTok. And this speaks to, not just the utility of AI and how intelligent it is, all of the different applications, but also how easy it is to use it because it's conversational. Right? You ask it a question and it responds very much like when we're, talking just you and I. So for the average user, they can find a lot of value in it because it has this incredible amount of knowledge, but it's also incredibly easy for really anybody to use.
Yeah, and it's incredible how fast people have figured out how to use it in their everyday lives. As an example, I think in the education space, people are terrified because kids have figured out how to do their homework with this stuff. And
yeah,
people have not figured out how to stop that yet. And I don't think they're going to because AI is...
Well, they developed the app for it, right? And then it innovated to be able to stump the app, right? It was supposed to be able to detect what's AI and what's not. And then it was too smart for that.
Yeah, I mean, AI is learning faster than our ability to stop it. And humans are adapting very well to leveraging it very quickly. So I think the overarching point is the data suggests this. Anecdotally, people are noticing this in their everyday lives. It is going to become a part of our everyday lives, and it is happening at an unprecedented pace, which is why, some people are almost afraid of it, honestly.
Yeah, it feels almost like we just have to embrace it because it's coming at us this quickly, regardless of what we do. So let's take a quick pause. I know a lot of folks are not as familiar with AI or artificial intelligence, right? It's really just been kind of over the last year that this has come into common language that we're talking about every single day. So we'll take a quick moment to talk about what artificial intelligence is, but then we're going to move quickly into some examples because this really comes to light when you think about it relative to the industry that we work in. So artificial intelligence, let's think about this at the kind of core foundational level for just a second. In the center here, we have the foundation model. On the left-hand side, you have all of the inputs. That's the data, right? Data is fed into the model. It trains the model so that it can adapt and then output tasks. Seems very simple, but the reality is that these models can understand such a vast data set, much larger than humans, quite frankly, even have time to think about. So the value here is that they are ingesting huge volumes of this data, and that training is so important because it means that they can perform these complex tasks and really make our lives a lot easier. So a couple examples of this. Let's think about it relative to the medical field. AI, how does AI assist doctors? One of the applications is diagnosing diseases. So AI can, look at every scan that has ever been taken overnight. At the same time, humans, right, as we think about identifying disease, we're a little bit limited here by the human eye. AI can look at things at the pixel level. So this is a much more kind of granular focus that AI can have in identifying disease. As it relates to the brokerage industry, the key here is that we train that model on benefits. And this is, obviously benefits in total, but also specific clients' benefits programs. Let's train the model to be smart enough to answer these very kind of niche questions about one specific plan parameter that an employee comes to you with. So tons of different applications here. The key is to make sure that we're training the model with the right data so that it can, kind of serve the purpose. It can output the tasks that are necessary to, managing a benefits program. But let's be honest, they're repetitive, they can be frustrating, and they're altogether very time consuming.
Yeah, and the other point as relates to AI is the more you do with it, the more it learns, the better
Right.
it is. And so, when you work with this stuff, what you realize is it's pretty good now, but it's getting better at an absolutely astonishing rate. And so, you recognize immediate benefits in automation, but you start to realize it just keeps going relentlessly up that curve. It keeps getting smarter. It keeps being able to apply more context. And we don't even know where the end of this is at this point, right? I mean, we're nowhere close to finding it because computer processing power is getting ever stronger. The models are getting ever smarter, and the training sets are getting ever more refined. And so, it can do great things now, but relative to what it'll be able to do in 12 months, it's almost mind-boggling.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And let's talk about that for a second. What is this going to mean in the next 12 months, right? I think that's probably about as far out as we can predict at this point. But specifically as it relates to the brokerage industry, what can we expect? What should we look forward to?
Perfect. So when we, so the origins of PlanYear as a company was we actually were a bunch of technology folks. We decided to get into the brokerage industry. We obviously learned a lot in doing that. And one of the things that really struck us, what brokers do is not easy, and it's a ton of work. And, the work is challenging enough that technology couldn't really solve the problem, but applied correctly, it could certainly make it a lot easier. So PlanYear started out life, you might think of it as a bunch of technology folks getting into brokerage, learning how hard it was, and then applying technology to it to make those workflows drastically more efficient. Somewhat by luck, advances in AI came along at the same time we were doing that. And what that then allowed you to do was to do more and to make it drastically easier to use. And so, instead of providing a tool, now what you can provide is essentially a solution to the problem. And the problem is that brokers do a lot of work, they enter a lot of data, and they do it again and again and again. We have to pay relatively highly compensated people to do this. And because it is somewhat repetitive, it is actually hard to recruit enough of those people to keep them there. And so, if you take that and then you overlay an industry where you have this super spike in volume of work around January 1st, and you really have the potential to solve an incredibly, large and difficult problem for brokerage firms. So let's get into the specifics of what that means in a moment. I mean, the good news here is that, the end of entering and re-entering data where if you get something wrong, there are very severe consequences of having to look things over again and again and again, having to research the same question again and again and again. All of that is going to come to an end. I can't say it will be tomorrow, but I can say over the next 12 to 18 months, the brokerage industry is going to change more than it has over the last 20 years. I was always struck by the fact that if you look at the tools of the brokerage industry, online enrollment was really the last new tool of any consequence to come along. Besides that, it's still in Excels, PowerPoints, and PDFs. All this stuff existed in the year 2000. It is largely the same way in the year 2000 as it is now, right? And AI is going to change all of that. Now, why? Let's get into the specifics. All right, one of the banes of the brokerage industry is data entry. It was shocking to us when we got into it how much manual data entry there is.
So painful.
We get these plans from insurance carriers that come in PDFs, right? They have many data parameters, and literally those plans then have to be taken by a human, looked at, and then re-entered into a spreadsheet again and again and again. So you put it in the spreadsheet, and then you have a spread. At some point from that spread, you're going to be running contribution models. You're going to take it to a client, and the client then says, what happens if I change this one number? And what do? Go back to your desk, you pull open the spreadsheet, you rerun the spreadsheet, and then you put it back into PowerPoint, then you go back to them. And it is incredibly labor intensive. It is very frustrating for the people who actually do this.
God forbid you make a mistake and enter one number incorrectly.
Yeah, exactly. And then once you've done all of that and they say, okay, I'm good with that, what do you then have to do? You then have to go and enter much of it again to make an opening presentation. And if that isn't bad enough, then you have to enter it again to do a benefits guide. And then you have to enter it again to send it to a carrier in a sole confirmation, who in turn then has to manually enter it in all of their systems. And if at any point someone makes a data error, whether it's the carrier or whether it's the broker, they are in a whole lot of trouble. This is insanity, not least when you consider that probably 60% of the volume is all happening at one time of the year. If you resource properly for January 1st, you're probably overstaffed for the rest of the year. And if you don't resource properly for January 1st, then you're going to kill the employees that you do have. And your chances of making errors goes up substantially. And if you do make an error, there's a good chance the client will fire you. It's horrible. It's
lose-lose situation.
Now, people have built quoting tools before, but we spoke to people in depth about this. And what was their number one complaint? Their number one complaint was, okay, fine, but getting the data in these tools is almost as painful as getting it into a spreadsheet. In other words, it's really the data entry that is the primary pain point, and it's error prone, etc. The insurance carriers certainly don't want to put it in your system, right? I mean, that's just work for their salespeople, and they don't really want to do that. And while it would make sense to close this gap through an API, it is almost impossible to get every carrier. It's hard enough actually to get one carrier to build an API that works, but actually getting every carrier, which is what you really need to make this useful, is almost impossible. Right. So how does AI help? Well, in the work that we have done, not only with ChatGPT, but with other large language models or LLMs, what we have discovered is that with the right prompts, which is to say the right training in AI parlance, they can actually read these quotes almost flawlessly, right? And they can do it across almost every carrier. Right? If not every carrier. I say almost just because there are too many for me to have tested every single one, but we've tested a whole bunch. And they are extremely accurate at being able to extract this unstructured data, understand enough context about what it is to then put it in a structured format for you. And so basically, what does that do? It eliminates the data entry problem. The second part will then be running the spreads. Well, it's smart enough to know what the common contribution models are, and it can actually suggest and run those contribution models for you. So instead of having to do all of those steps manually, all of that goes away. And then the third part is it can then push the data on once you have finalized it to your benefits guide, to your open enrollment presentation, to a sole confirmation in the carrier. All of this can then just get pushed out in a system that does not make mistakes. Yeah. So on the one hand, it is drastically easier for you to do it. On the other hand, it is less error prone, right? And it's almost like your marketing departments have, master's level assistants available to them, for a few $100s a year. It is almost mind boggling when you think about it in that context.
Yeah, unbelievable.
Okay, to the second part, one of the things that we did when we built PlanYear in the context of our experience in brokerage was that we realized that basically all the communication with the client and a lot of the communication with the carrier all happened over email. And what did this mean? It meant a couple of things. One, constantly searching through your email because some of these issues take a long time to resolve, right? And then you're looking.
Does not have very good search functionality.
Yeah, where was that file, or who was sent this, or
Right.
who was sent that. Second, end up in people's individual inboxes, and God forbid they were on vacation. Third, as managers, how do we know that they're being responded to in a prompt and correct way? Fourth, even if you assume all of that was true, you still have the issue of, the account managers being quite busy, right? A lot of times these folks are actually involved in the renewal process. Their day-to-day issues don't stop during that period.
Yeah.
And, they might not get responded to quickly enough. They might not have enough time to look at it and carefully figure it out. And then the final part was, they tend to be fairly repetitive, the questions that actually come in, yet they are answered from scratch every single time. A lot of times what people were asking us once we built an issue tracking system, and the purpose of the issue tracking system was, as issues came in, they would automatically be entered into a system where the individual account managers could see what issues they could see how old they were automatically assigned to them, and their managers could see how many issues they have and also how quickly they were responding. In other words, it provided an easy place to track it, which integrated seamlessly with email, but where they could actually collaborate and respond to things and track things. So that is what we built initially. And we had great success with it. It turned out that, you could keep track of things better, you would be more efficient. But what we constantly got asked was, well, if we have these questions that come in all the time, is there a place we can save them so that we can go look for them?
Templates. Yeah.
What we realized once we started working with these foundation large language models was that if you provide the right training and prompts to them, then essentially they can answer a lot of these questions. Now, I am not suggesting that we turn chatbots loose on employers, okay? I am not saying we are there yet. What I am saying is, though, that when an issue comes in, right, wouldn't it be nice to be able to click on a button and then have an incredibly intelligent master's level assistant be able to draft an answer that you, the benefits consultant, can review and then send out? We have found that, roughly speaking, over 50% of questions, this thing can answer, perfectly, right? It's just ready to go as is. In another probably 35%, it can get about 90% of the way there. And in the remaining 15%, maybe the human still has to do it. But all of those numbers are going to improve drastically over the next 12 to 18 months as the compute power gets stronger and as the models have larger and larger data sets to learn on. We had the benefit of having an initial data set because we were using issue tracking systems to actually provide the initial training to get there. But the more data we have, the smarter it gets, and the smarter it gets, the more it can actually answer. Let me give you an example of what I mean. If somebody emails in and says, hey, I have an employee, they really need to get durable medical equipment, what's covered, what's not, and what are the co-pays or co-insurances, etc. Imagine an AI assistant who can go into the certificate of coverage and figure out exactly what is and isn't covered, and then can go into an SPC and figure out what the deductibles and co-insurances are, and then can basically draft all of that into a well-written answer. I'm not saying a human can't do that. They certainly can, and they do today. But it takes time. And if it takes them time, that means they can service less accounts and they can service them less well, and they won't be able to give as prompt an answer as they otherwise would. And if it's all sitting in their inbox, and certainly when they get busy, they might forget and then not answer at all. On the other hand, imagine if A, as these issues come in, they are automatically categorized, they're put in their queue, and B, when they click on a button, the AI bot goes in, extracts all the information from the relevant documents, which it has access to, drafts a nice answer, and the benefits consultant can simply review it and say, yep, that looks good, click send. It means they can handle more things, it means they can handle it more accurately, and it means they can handle it more promptly. And I can bet you anything, if you ask your clients, what do you want? That's it.
And focus on the more strategic stuff, right? Make their life better, make them enjoy their job more, and also, help with retention. When you have time to actually, devote to strategy, to all of these other initiatives that fall, below the line because you're busy with these day to day. it improves the client experience. It just does. And then you increase retention years and years to come. So the benefits are really like everybody wins. Account manager, client, leadership, everyone wins.
Yeah. And really, I mean, what AI really provides is automation has existed for a long time. But the trouble with benefits was you needed automation with enough intelligence around context to be able to apply it properly. And what AI has really done is it's provided that, intelligence around context to be able to really harness the power of that automation.
Right.
So the third thing, and this, I guess, applies to employee support initially, but certainly it can also imply to an extent to employer as well, depending on how automated you want to get, is that you now have a 24/7 support model. Roughly, between 80 and 90% of employee questions can be answered, by these AI large language models. And the large language models don't sleep. So what does that mean? It means two things. One, you have the potential to have 24/7 support. Two, you don't have the huge cost of having to have a call center and people sitting behind it. And three, as importantly, you don't necessarily have to wait for them to reach out to you. You can embed this support in where the employees are. For example, these AI support tools can be embedded in Slack channels, benefit Slack channels, employer benefit Slack channels. They can be embedded via chat. They can be embedded via automated email responses. If you think about it, certainly employees value service, right? When we call into our credit card company, it is nice not to go through an IVR and have to hit 15 buttons and wait 30 minutes. I do appreciate not having to do that. Don't get me wrong. But what I appreciate even more is if I can just log into my account, type in a question, and get the answer to my question without having to wait at all. That's essentially what this can do for you.
And you think about remote populations, right? Global populations. The clock doesn't stop when employees need support. So being able to provide that 24/7 is huge. We have distributed workforces where you have an employee in almost every time zone, right? How do you solve for that?
Yeah, and again, we can't say today you can do all of it this way.
Right.
Certainly for 80% of it. And guess what? It's going to get better and better. And eventually you're going to get close to 100.
Right.
And so, and it's very clear. I mean, you can see the path forward for that. You can see the rate at which it's progressing. And to understand the capabilities of this thing, you see why that's inevitable.
Yeah, certainly it can solve for the 9 p.m., 10 p.m. questions the night before open enrollment ends, where everyone leaves them to the last minute.
Yep. And certainly, these things will work in partnership with humans, right? They're not designed to replace humans. The way I would think about it is an assistant for every human. And as such, it is a force multiplier for all of your employees. But that human touch that sits on top of it is still necessary. It just means it can be vastly quicker and more efficient.
It's exciting. Perfect. Well, at this point, we're actually going to go ahead and switch gears, and we'll show an example of what this looks like in action. And I have to say, personally, because of all of the RFPs that I've done in my life, I could not be more excited to show this functionality. Essentially, what we have built at PlanYear is an RFP responder, and this is powered by AI. So just give me 1 second, and I will share my screen here, and we can talk through exactly how this works. I've been on the sales side, both on the brokerage, but also, third-party providers, even at PlanYear, the RFPs that we've done. And let me tell you, without fail, they all come in one wave. You get 6 or 7 RFPs at the same time. Tarek will tell you they only come in when I'm out on my honeymoon. And you're in a crunch. You have to answer them all. And the reality is you don't even know the probability of if you're going to win the deal or not. but you have to put your hat in the ring, right? You have to respond. And so we felt that pain very deeply over and over and over again throughout the years. And we built this tool very, very much to respond to that. So we'll walk you through what this workflow looks like. We'll actually bring an RFP into the system and show you what it looks like to answer these questions with, an AI assistant that will essentially have the cheat code for you. So as a little bit of context on how this tool works, we have trained the system. So we have essentially trained it on our historical RFPs. What that means is, it knows the tone in which we respond to these questions. It knows the way that we talk about our firm. It has a huge understanding of, the background, so that it can apply that moving forward and do so in a way that, not just copies and pastes the questions and responses from previous RFPs, but actually translates that to a relevant answer to the question in the RFP.
Yeah, we trained this for our own purposes by loading, 20 or 25 RFPs that we had answered historically. But, in your case with this tool, you can do the same thing. You can load 20 or 25 of your RFPs, and it will learn your content, and it will learn to speak in your voice. And it will take not only that content, that RFP specific content, but it will marry it to its broader knowledge of the universe as a whole, which is probably greater than mine by several multiples, and then put it together into an answer that comes out eerily similar to your voice, with an intelligent context applied to each answer. It's not templating, it's not copying. It is actually intelligently taking it from various places and constructing a custom and well thought out answer for you, as Molly will now show you.
Which, if you look at the other tools, and certainly I've used every RFP tool on the market, they'll get you maybe halfway there. They'll copy and paste in a response that you had from a previous RFP that's in the right universe, but it's not written as a response to that question, right? Like, you still have to go through the process of rewriting it. And to be honest with you, half the time they pull in answers that just make no sense at all. And you end up having to do more work to kind of get rid of all of the junk and rewrite it. So from my experience, this is really day and night, the amount of time savings that you'll see from this. So let's go ahead and generate the first response to this question. So you can see on the top here, the AI has essentially ingested the RFP. It has not just the question on the top here, which has been brought in kind of directly from the RFP, but it also has generated a response. And you can see here, just from reading it, it's factually correct. It's written as a response to the actual prompt, which I would say is already, worlds above the rest of the market and with the tools that we've been using historically. But the awesome thing about this tool is, let's say, I'm really picky about the language that I choose in these responses for RFPs. And I look at this and I say, I'd actually like to rewrite this. I have a ton of different options that I don't have to do myself, right? I simply select them from the list. We can simplify the language. We can make it shorter, longer. Sometimes you actually do have word limits on these, or character limits. So it's really important that they're very concise. So I can actually just go through here and click the button to generate a new response. So let's say I just kind of want to see some different wording, nothing too particular, but I'm not super in love with the answer it gave. So let's draft a new response. And you can see that the system is basically generating, same core response. It still has the same, factual correctness, the same value is there, but it's rewritten it a little bit differently to provide me with a different option for how to respond to this. So, I'm trying to think, Tarek, how long did it take us to do this on previous RFPs?
We'll say that while Molly was out on a honeymoon and I was standing in responding to these RFPs, that might have been part of the reason it got built and prioritized with engineering. But
I think what I'm hearing is I should go on vacation more often.
Apparently so. I think the first one pre-tool took me about 8 hours from beginning to end. And the second one was done with this in less than 30 minutes.
Wild.
So what that means is you can answer more RFPs and you can answer them better. And you can participate in more of them, right? Some of them you've got a pretty good shot. Some of them are black boxes. And I'm sure all of us have probably chosen not to participate in some of them because we look at these 10 million questions and say, oh my God, I just don't have the time to do it. Yeah. In an my world, that should never happen.
Yeah. No, it's day and night. I'm so excited about this tool. So let's take a look at least one more response here. Let's give it another shot to answer one of these questions. So, a little bit more in the weeds type question here. Let's see how the AI does. And it looks great, honestly. This is very much the style of language and how we would respond to these RFPs. It's factually correct. Yeah, the tone is exactly how our responses look.
And the thing that was uncanny about it was, I mean, I knew it would generate something. I didn't realize. There were two big surprises for us. The first was how easy it was to train it, right? I mean, after we'd put in 20 of our prior RFPs, this thing was uncannily good at extracting that information. And it also is a great writer, a far greater writer, better writer than I am. And so, the real surprise was partly how easy it was to train and set up, which is important. And then on the other hand, partly how good it was at actually coming up with answers. Again, I'm not going to tell you everything was contextually perfect, but what I can tell you is I could edit it in here, right? And as you can see, using functions.
Yeah.
And then, zip through this whole thing relatively quickly. You can favorite responses that you think are particularly pertinent, and then you can export it at the end out into Word, right? And even the formatting it comes out with is pretty decent, and then just send it off. If you have a person or team who does RFPs for you, if your firm is big enough, suddenly you'll see their productivity shoot up, and
probably their happiness shoot up a lot too.
Yeah. Ultimately, think of it in these terms. If you can participate in twice as many RFPs, even if you just win one more deal in a year, right, that's meaningful. And whether we admit it or whether we don't, if we're doing our jobs correctly, at some point you have more opportunity than you do have time to respond. And so this can give you the time to respond to all of those. Yep.
Truly day and night. And as you mentioned, it does kind of export as that Word document. So you can really just, grab all of the responses and take that out of PlanYear, out of the platform. You can also copy that into another, template or something a little bit more beautiful before you go ahead and send it off. But yeah, it's probably reduces the amount of time by, I don't know, at least 9 hours on average for RFP. We spend so much time on these. You really dedicate a lot of time to it. So just being able to go through this, quickly save it, go back to the dashboard here, and essentially, after going through making those minor edits, you're really done. You're really ready to send that along to the client.
And the best part is now this one gets saved in the library with the changes that you made to it, and now means that, this is really closer than what I initially came out with, and the next time round it will take that learning into account and come out with something even closer and on message. So I'm not going to lie, we're in the early stages of using this, and we've been very pleasantly surprised how useful it is. But I would love to, I'm excited to have used this for a year and put 100 or so of these things through it and then see what it can do, because it's going to be even better.
Yeah, I can only imagine. Next busy season will be, one that we've never seen before. I'm going to have much more well-rested, bags under my eyes. Everything is going to be much brighter. Perfect. Well, let's go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and switch back to the deck here in just 1 second. But let's take a moment. Let's do a little bit of a conclusion here and talk about what does this mean kind of overall? What is the overarching impact to the brokerage industry?
Yeah, I think, look, the reality of AI is it is both an opportunity and a threat, depending on how you look at it, right? The reality is AI is going to fundamentally change the economics and the service model of the brokerage industry. It's not one, it's actually both. What do I mean by that? What I mean is you can do so much more, and you can do it so much more efficiently. That means that over time, the brokers who embrace AI are going to be able to increase their service offering and differentiate themselves in ways the ones who don't simply will not be able to compete with, right? And that is the threat component. The opportunity component is that not only will you be able to do that, but you will be able to do it with fewer people because you are providing them this assistant, this rocket fuel, if you like, so that they can do more in far, far less time. And that's the opportunity, right? So this is the bullseye of, on the one hand, I can increase my service level as a form of differentiation. And on the other hand, I can meaningfully increase my margins because one person can handle way more accounts. If you look at the major cost centers of brokerage, right? Employee support, employer support, RFP marketing, spreading, which is to say carrier RFP marketing, spreading. And then, if you think about it, RFP responses, all of these things are done with people. All of these people have costs. All of these people serve functions. And I'm not saying we should replace all of them entirely. But what I am saying is we can make them drastically more efficient because, right now they are digging ditches with their bare hands or at best with shovels. We are giving them full-on excavators that they don't need licenses to operate, and they're to do it massively more efficiently. And by the way,
one license. They're licensed brokers.
Fair enough, yes.
Sorry.
But they don't need a license to operate the excavator.
There we go. Yeah.
So they'll be able to do it massively more efficiently. It means that they can focus on the more strategic and the more relationship-oriented, client relationship-oriented aspects of the business, which is honestly what I like more and will have the biggest impact back on your clients. And so, make no mistake about it, this is, much more akin to the second coming of the internet, where all that manual work around paper enrollment went online, except this time the productivity side is going to be visited on the brokerage side. The second thing I'd like to point out is we are just at the tip of the iceberg of this, right? There are other things that take brokerage firms huge amounts of time, like commission tracking, which again, you can ingest all these documents and run all the calculations and splits. You can automate what is a ton of work currently being done manually, and also having a significant time lag. So, there are going to be more and more things over time which can be made drastically more efficient. And we are at the very early stages of this, but already it is clear that it will have the ability to change things in a very fundamental way.
Yeah, very, very exciting. A lot of good stuff to come. And I think we talked about this a little bit, the improved kind of service level offering, but this is incredibly valuable. Yeah.
Absolutely. What do our clients want? They want us to be responsive, they want us to be correct, and they want us to be quick, right? And this helps do that, and it helps do that not by adding cost, but rather by subtracting cost.
Yeah, that's the last piece here is really, we're making the lives of the employees better. We're increasing the service level offering. Employees, employers have a better experience. At the same time, overall costs going down. It's hard to think of another example of where this could happen or where it has happened previously. In almost every other circumstance, right? You increase the service level offering, you add additional cost. Oftentimes it feels worth it, right, to do that, but most of the time there is that balance, that compromise, and in this scenario, you can kind of achieve all of this in one fell swoop.
Yeah, and speaking from a technology background, I have seen, and Molly has seen, a lot of technology tools over the course of our career that can do cool things. But most of them, and let's take Salesforce and Workday as an example, they are both excellent and hugely powerful systems. But they're also very hard to learn how to use, right? And they're only powerful if people can actually learn how to use them. And when you have to go 10 menus deep and click through 5 different things,
no, you got to hire a whole team to do it. You have to outsource it.
Exactly. You need a whole team to go train people on how to do it and maintain these things and build workflows. The beauty of this is not only can it do all of this, but you do it in a question and answer format. You can ask it a question in plain English and it will give you an answer in plain English. And so, it has more power than any of these things. It learns and feeds on itself better than any of these things. And it also speaks our language. Historically, we have had to learn how to speak machine in order to interact with a machine, right? For engineers, they have to write code. And for humans, they have to learn how to click through many, many, many Byzantine menus, such that for your average technology tool, most people don't know how to use more than 5 or 10% of it, right? Because they're not going to spend their life learning it. With this, the amazing thing is it's more powerful than any of those things, but the learning curve is slim to none. And that is why, more than anything else, it will change everything.
I mean, everyone is using it. It's crazy. My friends who would be allergic to any other type of technology are coming to me and talking about ChatGPT.
So the average technology company spends a huge amount of money trying to explain to people what it does, why it matters, right? They call it marketing, but essentially that's what it is. The amazing thing about this is nobody's really spent any money marketing this thing. They don't need to. They just put it out there and people are finding their own use cases, in part because it's powerful and in part because it's easy to use. So it has achieved this level of adoption pretty much on its own. Yes, the media is hyping it, and rightly so, because they understand how impactful it is. But there haven't been companies, in a traditional technology way, spending money marketing it, telling you it's great because it can do this, because it can do that, it can do the other. It's been left to itself about what it can do, and it's doing an incredibly good job of it, which tells you how powerful it is.
Yeah, just wild. Wild. Well, I think we have a few minutes for questions here. Go ahead. I'm going to stop screen share and see what is coming through on the line. We had a couple of questions. Looks like the first one is, are we handing off our clients to a chatbot? I think this is a fair question.
Okay, so the answer is no, we are not. The chatbot is an assistant. We're yet to reach the point where it can be the responsible party, right? So what it can certainly, I would argue these chatbots are already at a point where they are vastly stronger than a human assistant, but they are not a replacement for a benefits consultant. There are areas in employee support when they're asking, what's my deductible, what's this, what's that, what's the other, where turned loose, and they have the advantage of being available 24/7 because they don't sleep. And then there are areas like in employer support where you don't turn them loose because they're not able to answer everything impeccably yet, and I don't know that they ever will. But what they can do is basically categorize everything, put the right things in front of people, and then give them drafts that in the vast majority of cases are either there and ready to go or pretty close. So again, it is not a replacement for humans, right? It is not a replacement for a relationship. It is additive to it.
Yeah, it's the nice thing. You can still, edit the email that you're sending and ask them about their kids and how they're doing and all of that great stuff. That doesn't change. But all of the, complexity around finding the right documents to answer these questions, that's taken care of. So you actually have more time for the relationship building piece, which, I think a lot of people get into this business because they like helping other people. They like building relationships, and it really allows them to focus more on that, which is great. Perfect. I think we have time for one or two more questions here. So next question is, how can we be sure client data is protected when using AI? It's a great question.
So the AI models, the foundation models, the basic knowledge is in a common model, but all your specific data is segregated from that model. So your individual will learn about your clients and your business. And we can not only segregate it at the brokerage firm level, we can segregate it at the individual client level. When a client X sends a question in saying, hey, what is my durable medical equipment deductible? The general knowledge of the model will know what a durable medical equipment is and that it has a deductible. But it will be segregated then, and it will go into the individual document for that client to find that information. So it will know what the deductible and coinsurance might be. And it will not then share that information because it's segregated from the broader model. So it can be segregated at the firm level, it can be segregated at the client level. So you don't have to worry about cross-pollination of data or potential data breaches. This is not a unique problem to brokerage. This applies across the board in any enterprise AI app. If you really want to think about AI in the bigger picture, there is the consumer model where all information is shared across everybody, and that is free, right? And people offer these things for free. Why? Because the collective knowledge as a whole grows. And then for the enterprise, you really have different requirements, because here you have a model that needs to have a general sense of everything, but not nearly as much, because you shouldn't be asking it kind of crazy off the wall questions, for benefits.
Legal advice or
asking what the speeding, what the legal speeding limit is on British secondary roads is not really relevant, right? I mean, it is important that a consumer model knows the answer to that, because you don't know who'll be answering where. But if you're looking at it from an enterprise perspective, that's not the point. And you don't need to share that knowledge. What you really need is deeper knowledge in the given problem set that it's actually working on. And you need segregation to make sure that people's data is not being shared inappropriately. And on the enterprise side, that is what the models do. Yeah,
makes total sense. I think we're hitting up against time here. We do have a few other questions on the line. So would encourage folks to go on to PlanYear.com and fill out the contact us form. More than happy to answer any questions that you might have. You can also reach us at sales@PlanYear.com. We'll just say a huge thank you to all the folks on the line. It's been a great conversation today. I can say personally, this is probably the most excited I've been in my career. Just so much progress in such a short period of time. So really, really exciting things to come. And we're excited to continue building.
Thanks, everybody.